Welcome to the Real Humans, Great Souls podcast. I am yours truly, Professor Johanna Sophia of Johanna's Raw Foods and the Rawsome Life Project at rawsomelifeglobal.com. And I am talking today, and I'm still talking by myself. I know I should be interviewing other people, but here I am. Still talking by myself about all these different topics. And today I said it's a surprise to my tribe. Today's topic is human biology. What is biology? Why do we call it biology? And all these other questions that arise around it. How is biology best maintained? What have we done to biology? Of course, I can't go into all of it, obviously. And at the top of my list of topics to talk about is a very strange first topic, and that is eugenics. Why? Because humans are the only ones who intentionally interrupt, misinterpret, and kill biology, including other humans. Not for food, not even, well, maybe for territory. But yeah, no other species really does that. You could say a swarm of locusts swarms across a landscape and ravages it, right? But when the swarm is gone, everything revives itself and lives back into its previous shape for the most part. All right. So that's what eugenics has to do with biology. We're the only ones who are destroying biology. And of course, not just the human biology, but the planetary biology in so many ways that it cannot easily revive itself, rejuvenate itself. But now to what is biology? What is this thing that we call biology? The logic of bio is life, the logic of life. So, yeah, look at this thing called life on this little planet called planet Earth. And we, in the meantime, have already dissected everything into tiny little pieces that each scientist studies only this minute little category of something, of a part of a cell, or of a part of a blood platelet, or of a part of a biological environment, a particular mushroom family. So we've kind of categorized our minds to lose track of, or maybe we've never had that track for that matter, of what constitutes all of biology and how does it function. So I'm going to some very, very, very basic things first, just to bring it into constitutes logic of life. What is life? That's the one thing that our scientists have a really hard time defining. What is this thing called life, right? We can analyze the vitamins, the minerals, the phytonutrients, the bacteria, all those tiny little things, the critters inside of things. And we have names for them. But what sparks them into motion, and that particular motion that is not externally created as the wind blows the leaves across the landscape, but that is internally arising out of what? Out of a seed. But the seed will not do anything if it doesn't have the egg or the womb or the environment or the soil or the water. And the water is full of nutrients that feed the seed, so this thing called life can begin. When I talk about this topic in my Easy Fun Raw workshops and lectures, I always ask the audience, so what is that thing? And they will say, life force, and of course that's a very woo-woo word, right? Life force. Nobody has ever measured the electricity of life force. We can measure the growth, we can measure the heat, or the temperature, we can measure all kinds of things. But that thing that brings something to life is really at the root of all of what we call biology, right? And we can't quite define it. And of course, that's why people invent gods and spirits and mysterious explanations to have that thing defined that is not easily definable. Or maybe it just isn't definable. So we have seed, we have womb or egg or environment, terrain, also another word for it, right? We have all this that is necessary for the beginning of life. Of course, then we think that water, air, sunshine are also necessary elements, right? What is sunshine? Sunshine is, if you will, radiation, is light, is energy, is vibration, is, what's the other word that I'm looking for? Darn. Everything is frequency is the word I'm looking for. Frequency, of course, just means the wavelength, really, right? The length of the wave. Frequent as in repetition of a particular thing. And the frequency, therefore, is something that's in motion. So maybe it is motion itself that is within electricity, that is within biology, that is within a cell tissue, that is within this human body. All right, let's look at a few more angles of biology. What other common denominators are there for all life forms? When we get to life forms, we can talk about species. We can talk about, that's really what we call life forms, right? Species. And then variations, endless variations within the species, to the extent that there is no clone. Even though we think we clone things, there is no identical replication of any life form. There's always some little variation. And just as there is perfect symmetry in our mathematical imagination, there is no perfect symmetry in life forms, in biology, even though there are structures everywhere. There are squares, there are various star forms, there are patterns, and still there's what makes it alive seems to me that there is not ever perfect replication or perfect patterning. There's always a little variation. So, what else can we say all life forms have in common? So, we need, for life to occur, we need, it seems, some form of water, some form of H2O. We need oxygen, some form of oxygen, and some form of energy, as in sunshine. And then we need nutrients of all kinds, from minerals to whole trees that the elephant fells and eats. Not the trunk, but the leaves. But yeah, nutrients is the other element. The old Greeks, of course, have the 4 elements of water, air, sunshine, and soil, as in minerals, right? So all life forms need nutrients also. Now, what kind of air does life need? What kind of water does life need? What kind of nutrients does life need? And again, in general, one could even say what kind of energy in terms of sunshine, what kind of temperature range does life need? Of course, I maintain that there is a limit of temperature that at least surface life forms can sustain. And that's quite simple. At 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or is it 44 or maybe 45 degrees Celsius, inner Celsius of the life form, whichever it is, whether it is an insect or a tree, the inner heat, the inner temperature cannot exceed that, or that life form will die. And of course, in us humans, that's the temperature of 106 degrees in Fahrenheit, or 44 degrees in Celsius. Gee, I grew up in Celsius first and I forgot these numbers. That's terrible. So yeah, the equivalent. So there's a certain temperature range within which life as we know it on this planet can occur. And that is definite. And we forget that. We forget it, especially when it comes to what constitutes real nourishment. So we have these fancy words for what induces life, right? We think it's for plants, it's photogenesis. We think that for mammals, it's insemination. And we think for plants, it's watering the plants, right? And then watering the seeds, and then they grow. So we kind of simplify these images, and we leave out, in these descriptions, we leave out the nutrient element. What kind of nutrients does each species require? Of course, it's easy for us to observe animals and see what kind of nutrients they need, right? What nutrients does a wolf need? What nutrients does a fox need? What nutrients does a chicken need, or any kind of bird need? And we can define that the bird eats insects and grains, and the bigger birds eat small rodents and animals. The very big eagles even eat. So they're carnivores, right? Birds are are carnivores, if you will, plus seeds and maybe nuts, acorns, that kind of thing. I tell this story about the acorn that falls from the tree and is picked up by a bird and swallowed and pooped out on top of a tree, and then this big oak tree comes about. And I tell that story to demonstrate that contrary to the basic law of gravity that we have on planet Earth, this seed suddenly reaches out toward the sky, right? By growing a tree against gravity. So that's to describe other laws on planet Earth. So all of biology requires those elements, and we can then decide which creature or which life form requires which nutrients. Now, I wanted to talk briefly about in what state these nutrients have to be. For example, if we had pure H2O without any other life form in it, meaning completely sanitized, or what's the word, water, that water would not nourish. If there were no minerals, no other life forms, no bacteria, no tiny little pieces of plant life in that water, that's why our chlorinated, fluoridated water that is so poisonous does not really serve the human body to help nourish and create proper life replication. I often talk about cell replication. Of course, life regenerates itself all the time. There's never a stoppage unless we die or the life form dies. So even these four elements, the energy, sunshine, the air, the water, and the nutrient base, the soil, the minerals, the vitamins, etc., have to be alive to properly nourish the life form that is to be nourished. What does that mean? That means that the air also, when completely sterile, cannot nourish any life form. And it's kind of the point of it, right? We sterilize air in a clean room, for example, where tiny little chips are being made, because we cannot allow those life forms to be in those particular elements. But we have to go into the clean room with in a hazard suit, or we die, because we cannot live on air that is lifeless. Neither can we live on water that is lifeless. Neither can we live on food that is lifeless. We try. And that's why we live such short lives. And that's why we are so miserable and we get so sick and we get so unhappy, sad, aching, ailing, because we have lost track of, or have lost sight of, the fact that all life forms, all biology nourishes itself with other life forms. Now, I argue when people say, yeah, but look, humans have eaten cooked food for a long time, thousands of years probably, and they're still alive. And I'm saying, yeah, they're still alive. We are still alive because our water and our air, and we still eat a fruit here and there or a piece of salad, something like that. These living life forms that we still inhale and or bathe and drink and expose ourselves to are enough to keep us alive, but are not really enough to keep us well. So that brings me to all life forms also digest the life forms that they absorb for nourishment. What does a tree ingest? It was interesting that I was just looking at one of my clients, these are teenage girls, had a homework, or actually it's a Regents preparations, it's a test preparation, where they're studying life sciences. And it was this drawing with various life forms, a tree, a fish, an elephant, a lion. They were all out of proportion, but to show which nourishes. And there was bacteria, little dots for bacteria and things. Water was not in there, but and there were arrows, which things nourish which other ones, right? Or which become the food for others. And for the tree, it was actually bacteria, and for the grass. So how come at the same time that we understand that, and that the kids learn that the tree intakes or breathes in bacteria as a life form for nourishment, along with the water from underground and the minerals, right? That at the same time, we perceive bacteria as this invasive, poisonous thing that will kill us. Now, I could talk for hours about the whole germ theory and the terrain theory and all of those things and what we can observe in nature. But it struck me that here it is, there are these different life forms nourishing each other in this drawing, and still we don't understand that all these elements that all the other species consume for nourishment are alive forms of nourishment. So we are the only ones who stuff our bodies with lots and lots of dead food, dead other nourishment, and think that therefore we are better than the rest. We are functioning better. But we too have the same cell tissue that all the other mammals have, and all the other, in fact, all the other plants have too. We have the same kinds of tissue, the same kinds of cell tissue, that is, the same kinds of DNAs, just with slight variations. And therefore, we require the same kinds of nourishment. So then we all require living nourishment. Now, we don't. I'm just thinking of, there was one African nation where people had as a delicacy, and of course there are many such things. Other people eat clams and oysters. Oysters are eaten alive, by the way, right? But these people eat live ants, right? They pick up the live ants with like a pap of millet or corn. Literally pick them up as they're running around on an anthill, right? And have these ants stuck in the mash, which is sort of thick, and then sort of that's a delicacy. Yeah, same as people slurp those oysters. Sorry. And these are live elements that actually have more value than the dead versions of the food that we ingest. Now, of course, I often talk about, and I'm only going to be very short on that today, talk about the fact that there's different categories of animals on this planet. Some are herbivores and some are carnivores, and very few are sort of omnivores that can go both ways. But they have the carnivoric system that also allows herbivore nourishment, i.e. plant life, to be digested. Just briefly, what is typical for a carnivore? And I start there because, so many of my dear scientist friends never even look at the very basic, simple things. Carnivores have in common that they, of course, eat their prey raw, maybe rotten, but that's still raw, right? It just includes all kinds of worms and other critters. Yeah, so, and they consume, they have, of course, they have teeth that work like this, not teeth that can grind. They have teeth that can grab and tear. Very, very strong teeth, very, very strong. I wish I had some of that strength in my cheekbones so that I could like tear flesh from other creatures or tear another creature. And then they have the ability to swallow large lumps because they can't grind down into little pieces, and they don't have knives and chop into little pieces, right? So they have to be able to swallow large lumps of flesh of other living creatures, or the entire thing, like snakes can literally swallow an entire live mouse, or depending on their size, a rat, or even a bunny rabbit. So for that, you need an esophagus, this tube from your mouth to your stomach, right? Needs to be able to open so wide that it can let through an entire lump of flesh with cartilage and sometimes bones and skin and all kinds of stuff, right? Off that living flesh that they tear. So as far as I know, at least I haven't met anyone, there's no human who can do that. So if you have a lump of flesh let's say that's as big as my computer mouse, right? Now, how are you going to get that down your throat in one swallow? I don't know. I haven't seen anybody do it. So we have these excuses. So, okay, all carnivores have a wide esophagus, or an esophagus that opens up to let down large lumps of flesh. And of course, the flesh, when raw, is very tough and does not fall apart like when it's cooked, right? That's our dear friends, the lions, don't have a little grill somewhere. Neither do the wolves, or the hawks, for that matter. And then what happens in the stomach is that carnivores have to break down that flesh that comes into their stomach in their digestive tract with acid. Now, we also have acid, but they have like 10 to 20 times more acid than we have. Hydrochloric acid, or hydrochloric acid like acid. So it's a similar acid to hydrochloric acid. And that will dissolve, and it takes a long while, dissolve the flesh and will then enable the body to draw the nutrients out of that, again, raw flesh, to build more tissue in their own bodies to prolong their lifespan. Now, herbivores, on the other hand, do not have the esophagus, do not have the amount of acid. Oh, and of course, we haven't even discussed the length of the small intestine, right? It's very short in carnivores. It's very, very long and windy. And, it's like, I often ask myself, how do I pack, 12 fingers or something long? So it's several foot long. Let me just check. How long is the small intestine? It's long, and it's winding inside of our belly, while the carnivore has a very short small intestine because all the dissolving happens in the stomach with the acid in the stomach, and then is excreted faster. So how long is the small intestine? There it is. What? Oh my God. The small intestine is 22 feet long, or 7 meters long. A meter is like this long. So there you have it. Okay, so between 18 and 22 feet long. And then again, another, there's obviously a range, because another one says it's 9 to 16 feet long. Whoa, crazy. All right. So I was wrong. I was anticipating much less, and still, several feet long, but it's even double that. So, whereas, like I said, carnivores, not carnival, carnivores' intestines are shorter. And what would happen if it weren't shorter, there would be rot. And of course, when raw flesh rots, it can become very, very toxic. So it needs to be discarded fast. And when humans eat flesh of animals and it sits, and then we get constipated because we don't eat enough plant life and fiber, etc., right? Then it sits in the bowels for days or even weeks for some people. Then of course, all kinds of toxicity is spread into the body. All right, so we do have a clear understanding. We can observe it. It is very, very easy to observe what makes a particular biological entity a herbivoric entity or a carnivoric entity. And where do we fall, this human body here? Into the herbivoric one. We have all the features that are typical for herbivores. And we override that by cooking the flesh, because then it falls apart. Then we can actually grind it and break it down. And we make it taste like not flesh. We make it taste with like what we do pepper, and of course pepper and salt, let's say pepper, paprika, then we put rosemary and oregano, and every culture that has a meat eating culture will flavor the flesh with plants and plant flavors. Interesting concept, right? To make it actually so that we like the flavor. Because people say, oh yeah, no, I would like dig straight into a big leg of pig raw, right? I would love that. Really? Then why don't you? Why is nobody offering raw pig legs? So we have created this whole thing around flesh eating that makes no sense, but we are humans. We do things that don't make sense to our biology, but the effect of it, and I'm not arguing today why we do things, just the very short version is, because we have brains, because we have a mind, because we have a certain amount of willpower, however limited it is, we override biology and we want to create culture and we want to invent different things. And we want to try combinations of foods. Animals just pick what's there, what their instincts or their training from their mothers most of the time have taught them. That's what they will pick and that's what they will consume for all their life. We, on the other hand, want to create. We are creative beings, and therefore we can create all kinds of nonsense that can be very destructive to our well-being and to our biology. So instead of nourishing ourselves with wonderful living entities that could enable our cell tissue to replicate at most efficiency, at highest efficiency, we do all kinds of things and put that into our body and onto our skin and into our hair and wherever we can to inhibit or prevent even or turn into abnormal the cell reproduction that nourishment should be for. So, for example, instead of giving a cell the nutrients that it needs to replicate properly to make proper, let's just say, skin tissue, we may have poisoned that process to an extent that the skin will start creating, what do we have? Those warts or those, there are all these crazy outbreaks on skin or rashes or eczema or psoriasis, right? Because we don't have the correct nutrients for the body to create proper skin tissue. Now we can, again, override that mishap with creams. And I was just reading about what's the stuff that they use for skin issues like eczema. So you can externally make the skin not break out, but then the same poor cell replication happens somewhere else in the body because you're still not giving the body the right nutrients to be able to make proper skin tissue. Why can't I think of the substance, the word? It'll come. In other words, biology requires a certain nutrient quality for biology to function best. And of course, that's not to override the natural life cycle, because all of life is always a cycle and emerges, thrives, lives, and meets its date of extinction or date of expiration, right? That is also part of biology, that all biology is cyclical. Yes, some trees can stand for hundreds of years, and humans can only stay here for maybe 150 years, but we don't even want to explore what it's like to have a full lifespan, because we are so determined to not allow our body to replicate properly so that we could stay here longer and function. Instead, we deprive our bodies of the nutrients that we need. We destroy the air, we neutralize or sanitize the water, or poison it, really is what I'm saying. And we don't allow sunshine to properly impact our skin, which we need to have for life to perpetuate itself, but instead put sunscreen and lotions and soaps and oils and all kinds of stuff onto our external recipient of energy. This thing here is a recipient for air, for bacteria, for sunshine, energy, for that vibration that comes into you in a living environment. So if we deprive ourselves even of that by destroying the recipient, what could you call that? The consumer of it is also our entire skin. We always say the skin is the largest organ of the body, and that is very true. And of course, the organ needs nourishment, needs to replicate itself all the time. Skin tissue replicates very, very fast. It's only several days that it renews itself all the time. That's why, it's normal for us to shed dead skin, because we're supposed to always make new. If we don't make new, we have those skin issues that are so prevalent now among children, right? We have so many children with skin issues, with eczema, with psoriasis, with rashes of all kinds. And it's sad and it's unnecessary. And we don't go to the root cause. We put Band-Aids and bandages and creams and lotions and then medications and antibiotics. And antibiotics is anti-biology, is anti-life. So yeah, human biology requires living plant life for nutrition, including living water, living air, and sunshine. And sunshine falling onto a surface that is capable of absorbing it, and that is the skin surface, of absorbing it and transforming it into what we call vitamin D3 and into the enhancement of life replication. Because contrary to what we normally think of as the insemination and replication of life, as in semen and ovum, egg, which of course is the beginning of a new human body construction, if you will, this little factory that we women have to produce a new human body. that's what we typically think of when we think of God, my words are not there today. I'm blanking on several words. That is too weird. Conception of birthing, of replicating life. Of course, I'm into this replicating because, of course, other life forms don't have the the mammals form of replicating with semen and egg, right? And the carrying, the gestation time that we have along with all other mammals. So replication doesn't just take place for reproduction, but it also takes place for reproduction of cell tissue all the time. So biology is only biology when it's constantly in motion, when it's constantly being nourished, and when it constantly digests. So let's spend a couple more minutes on digestion. So if we don't have the right biochemicals, if you will, in our digestive tract, in our saliva, in our juices, in our enzyme composition, and our, the pancreatic enzymes, in our, and a little bit of acid too for us humans, in our stomach and in the small intestines and even in the bowels. One of my clients was telling me that they had an infection with E. coli. And E. coli is, if I understand it correctly, a bacterium that lives in our bowels and is necessary. But of course, if the bowels get permeated or the bowel walls get leaky, and E. coli gets into any kind of other spaces in our human body, then E. coli is extremely dangerous. So I'm just verifying this. E. coli, not evolution, no. E. coli in our bowels. I mean, as yes, E. coli live in the intestines of healthy people. There you have it. Even Google knows those things. It's just people don't put two and two together. So they are where they belong and where they are necessary to break down the rest of the already partially broken down in the stomach and in the small intestines food matters, to get the last nutrients out of the matters, the food matter, and into the bloodstream via the proper avenues, not via breaking through the walls and letting the E. coli escape. So therefore, we also need a living system with parasites and bacteria and what we call viruses, those little entities that are just cleaning agents within cells, as far as I'm concerned, and fungi in our system, which are other life forms within our life form, to make the whole thing work. So what is human biology? It's a living entity that requires living nutrients to function as a living life form as best as possible, if we do not want to be sick every other week. I was just speaking with my manager in Germany, and She is already sick for the third time in 2024. Now, something is not working correctly, even though she tries to do all the good healing teas and things. So something in her system is already not well balanced, that she feels she always picks up somebody else's cold, right? That's what she thinks. Picks up somebody else's flu or sinusitis, laryngitis, whatever it is. So this whole concept of picking up other people's diseases, there's some validity to it, because there is such a thing in my understanding of genetic resonance. And of course, yeah, ingesting other people's stuff. And still, when you try that in actual blind studies, double-blind studies, it doesn't work. You can feed somebody the nose phlegm of a sick person, and they won't get sick. You can even stick it into their noses, and they won't get sick. So those studies have all been done, but their results run contrary to the popular narrative that we need for our medical industrial complex to function, right? To always have you sick so that you can always get something to at least fix the symptoms and cause other side effects and so forth. You know the story. So I wanted to now go to what are all the elements to create the best possible support for your living biology, for your living system. So now I've talked a lot about the general understanding, observations. It's not theory, it's just what you can literally observe, right? Of course, bacteria we can only observe under the microscope. But we can, even if we didn't have a microscope, we could understand that all life forms ingest other life forms, right? And that all life forms are what I call a symphony of smaller entities of life. All right, so what are the elements? Oh my God, I've spoken for so long. This always happens. This is terrible. What are the elements that we need to create the best possible biology for ourselves? Obviously, good air, but not just good air, also good breathing, so that we actually consciously make an effort to inhale the best air. Right now, somebody is cooking in the kitchen, and things got burnt. So I get this burnt air. Okay. And because I've been thinking about all these things for a long, long time, I have created a system that I would love to introduce you to. And maybe next week I will break down that system actually and what it's for. It's my Evolve system. E for establish what you really want to achieve in terms of health and functioning, or also professionally. V for verifying that when you change to more or all living nourishment, that you verify that that works, because you can feel it immediately. 3 days, 5 days on organic, raw, plant-based foods, and you feel differently. It's very, very fast. O for overcoming your old stuff. Let's just call it that right now. I call it also turn your traumas into tools as part of the overcoming and the old stuff needs to be transformed into usefulness, right? We don't want to blame, oh, I did everything wrong, oh, how terrible. No, I experienced this and I will turn that experience into a tool that helps me create this vital, vibrant biological support for my biology. So then we have L for love your biology, love your body, love your this whole functioning, everything from the outside to the inside and back. You have to love it to enable it to really flourish, right? And yes, it will find its end. Don't you worry. That's going to happen anyway. So, but while you're still here, while you're still in this body, you can revitalize it enormously. And that's what we do in my Super Happy Body course. That's a 12-month course. I start the next one on March 12th. And you can join that even a little after that time, but you can join that class for 12 months. You will learn how to have the best biology. So then we get to vitality for the second V here. Vitality is now achieved, and we need to figure out how we relate to the world, how we put our vitality out to the community, out to other humans, how we relate to our environment. So, and then we have the last E, which is establish your new lifestyle, because we can only enhance this biology if we create a continuum of this enhancement, because the replication of our body is continuous and always there. It doesn't stop because now you fixed it and now it's no, it continues. You are not alive unless it continues to replicate itself and unless you continue to bring all the good stuff into it so that it can do that at maximum ability, at maximum efficiency. So we get to evolve, and the last E being for establishing your new lifestyle so that you can continue supporting your biology. All right. We are up on time, and Evolve is the system that I use in the Super Happy Body course. You can find a little more information about that course on johannasrawfoods.com. And you can just connect with me via that website or via watching this in the comments, and we will find you and connect with you. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And it's a surprise, but it's also an old an old understanding of mine, an old mission of mine to go over these elements again and again, because it is not necessary that we suffer so much. It is not necessary. We only suffer so much because we refuse to look out there how it works. It's so obvious. So open your eyes and open your mind and your brain and look. That's how it works. And so many people have experienced that when they adjust their lifestyle to how it works, life becomes superbly happy, and you can then really go into creating what you want to create in the world. or doing what you want to do in the world. It doesn't have to be creative. At your best level of functioning and at your best level of enjoying and at your best level of loving your life and your biology, including the wrinkles. I'm still working at that. At 70, I'm still working at that because we're so programmed. And that's, again, that's also a large part of the almost like the deprogramming, right, of our brains as to what we think we must have and eat and drink and do, when biology shows us very, very clearly that that's probably not the right approach, what the industries are selling us at the moment. All right, guys, I look forward to getting your responses and your comments, and I look forward to working with you guys. If you want to learn more about the Evolve system and be part of this next Super Happy Body class, see you there. Ciao.